Well, good evening. This is Talking Devils, the leading independent Manchester United podcast. I'm Paul, and this is episode 2 of the United Before Fergie podcast. If you are watching this live on YouTube or Facebook, then please feel free to get your comments or your questions in. If you're watching the replay, hi. So do still feel free to comment because we will get back to you. We'll reply. If you're listening back on the audio podcast, please be sure to subscribe and leave a review on the platform that you're listening on. This week, my guest is revered United author Wayne Barton, writer of, I've lost count of how many books you've done now, Wayne. You've done books on Brian Greenhoff, on The True Genius by George Best, Eternal, the Duncan Edwards story, and The Last Busby Babe, which is the autobiography of tonight's very special guest, Mr. Sammy McIlroy. Evening, Sammy. How are you, sir?
Good evening. Very well, thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast. It's not very often that a United legend comes strolling in and wants to sit with us and chat for half an hour or so. So really appreciate you coming on board. Wayne, how are you?
Yeah, all good. Happy because get to spend my Monday night with Sammy and your good self, and obviously with the United win yesterday in good spirits.
Absolutely. So Sammy, I've got a lot of comments from my social media feeds. I put some posts out on Facebook and also on Twitter, and I will, as the podcast goes through, I'll run through some of the comments and some of the posts that I've had, and there are one or two questions in there that burning questions that people have always wanted you to answer. So I will get to those. But we'll get started. So you've been back at Macclesfield now for about 6 months. Is that correct? How's all that going?
Yeah, I've been back. I was asked back by Robbie Savage. In a sort of a mentor role to help the coaching side of things, and it's went unbelievably well. We were crowned champions last week. We got the trophy at the weekend there, which was fantastic. That's the second champions, league champions that Macclesfield have done in the last 2 seasons. So the club's on the way up. The club's always been in my heart since I've been manager there for 7 years. Mm-hmm. 93 to 2000. I had great memories of my time there. Very, very, very successful. We were getting into the Football League from the Conference, League 1, League 2. It was absolutely fantastic. And I was delighted when Robbie gave me the opportunity to come back in a mentoring role, and I'm enjoying it immensely.
Fantastic. Now, you mentioned your management previously was Macclesfield Town. I had a tweet or a reply to a tweet from Mark Weaver, who said that he sold you Martin McDonald from Doncaster and let him pay us when he got him promoted, and he did. Never got the recognition he deserved as a player or a manager, and he's pretty certain that you got Macclesfield promoted from Division 2 on the smallest budget in the league in 1998. So I thought that was a really nice and a different comment to make from because it's been McIlroy Monday today, which sounds a little bit cliche and a bit cheesy, but it's and Mark, not a United fan, but he took the time to tweet that's what his experiences with you as well, and said you're very underrated as a manager. How do you feel about that particular comment?
What's the budget?
I've got no idea.
Never.
Isn't it a bird stick in a cage? Oh, that's
never
a budget.
Had a budget in my life as a manager, to be
honest. He did say the smallest budget in the league in 1998. So
yeah, maybe, and I wouldn't argue with that. But we with the help of a pal of mine, Gil Prescott, we just stuck and dived with players. We looked at the players that were available and obviously the ones that were the cheapest, but we went for. But also we had a type of player that we wanted to come to Macclesfield, and that all stems from my days at Manchester United. I wanted to play with my team when I became a manager, and we looked for those type of players who I thought and Gil thought could do that sort of role. Going back to like a 4-4-2 or a 4-3-3, players that could fit into that sort of system. And as I say, we used to duck and dive and try to get them, and they knew right away once they were coming to Macclesfield that they wouldn't be on any sort of a wage with other clubs, especially in the conference days, going back to a few years ago. The conference clubs, going even back those years ago, especially southern teams, were always on better money than northern teams, always.
Yeah. So it's interesting when you talk about the lower league teams, where it is, the differential between the lower league teams and the big leagues, where the budgets run into the hundreds and hundreds of millions. It's proper grassroots, isn't it?
Oh, it's without a doubt, it's grassroots. And when I started off in management in the early 90s at Northwich, when I retired as a footballer professionally, going into Northwich really opened my eyes. Part-time players, people who worked, which was their main job, and then I seen them, if I was lucky, on a Tuesday or a Thursday night, and then pick the team for a Saturday. That really opened my eyes about management at such a level where I was never in control really of my playing staff. They dictated when they trained, they dictated when they played. And it was a really, really hard sort of introduction of trying to be a manager. But it's the best thing I ever did. It learned me to try to handle players, handle their life, handle their the football side of things. When, as I said before, the job was their really breadwinner.
Can I jump in and just give Sammy a little bit of praise here, which he's not taking. So Sammy was he was manager of Macclesfield in the non-league. Now, if anyone's ever been involved in non-league football, particularly in the 1990s, it was full of local businessmen who would say that they have money and connections, and they generally didn't have money and connections. They were looking to make connections through the connections to people like Sammy. So Sammy would come into non-league football, or a big name like Sammy would go into non-league football, and you would get the local wheeler dealer businessman trying to sort of climb up the society ladder in that way. So it was a minefield, really, non-league football, learning to know, to trust, and so Sammy got the right people around him. But we're talking about a budget and having no budget. I think that's the value of managers. Perhaps you don't see it as often these days because there's even money in the lower leagues due to the drip feed from the Premier League. But Paul, you will know exactly what I mean when I talk about the 80s and 90s. I know this is United before Fergie, but you'll know where I'm going at. Perhaps even the United before Fergie era, where it was the character of squads and players and teams that really made the difference. So what Sammy built was a team with character, and they played football the right way at a time when teams in the conference and the non-league didn't play football; they played hoof it. And really, they had no right as a club with no budget and playing football, the anti-non-league football kind of thing, really. And they upset the apple cart with that. So Sammy's talking about sort of wheeling and dealing with Gil Prescott and stuff like that, but he really needs to take a large dose of credit, and I'm sure the Macclesfield fans do on a daily basis when they see him. But I just wanted to take this opportunity to do that because I know that he won't do it himself.
Thanks, Ryan.
And well-deserved credit, might say. So, Sammy, you talking about management, you played under two of the biggest characters in United's history. Arguably, they don't get a lot bigger than Samat, and also the Doc. In terms of the styles that each of those put into their teams, did you pick any of that up when you moved into management from your playing career?
100%. Absolutely 100%. I was very, very fortunate to have a little bit of time with Sir Matt, especially on friendlies, going back to Ireland, where we go quite regular to either the north of Ireland or the south of Ireland. I remember going when I was 16 years of age with the team. I think it was 69, maybe touching 1970. I went to Bohemians with Sir Matt, and just to listen to him talk to the players. We had a friendly against Bohemians in the south of Ireland, 30,000 people there on a Wednesday night, and just go out, entertain these people. Let's play attacking football. It was just a pleasure to listen and look at him, and the respect he got of such great players like Dennis Law, Bobby Charlton, Besley. All those big names just listened to him and really wanted to play for him. But it's the way he came across as a man manager was absolutely second to none. But he thought about supporters. He wanted attacking football. He wanted entertainment. I got that off Sir Matt at an early age, and then through to Tommy Docherty, who was the same. The Doc was an attacking manager. He wanted to play the United way. If we win well. Never talked about opposition. Wanted wingers, wanted flair players. Even from the back, we played out. And I've spoke to Wayne about this before, about the reputation that Pep Guardiola got with his sort of pressing game back with Barcelona in the days. When we lose the ball, get it back as quickly as possible, the way Barcelona did. Tommy Doc did that with us at Manchester United. We played with a high tempo passing game, finishing with a shot across, making a goalkeeper work, testing defenders. But once we lost that ball, we had to get it back as quickly as possible. And that's the way that Doc built this team round. And it was an absolute pleasure to play under those two managers.
Yeah. I mean, we spoke, our first podcast last week was about the 77 Cup final, because it still holds an extremely special memory for lots of United fans of a certain vintage. And we will touch on that as well as the 79 game as well, which perhaps doesn't evoke such happy memories for United fans. But it's been about a year since your book, The Last Busby Babe, came out. How have you found the reception to that has been in that year? Absolutely
remarkable, really. I mean, I travel about a bit, as you know, and everywhere I go, and I'm being absolutely honest and serious here, the feedback I get from the book is absolutely fantastic, and so many people have enjoyed it. And every time I talk about the book, to be honest with you, to people, I always mention Wayne, because the two of us worked unbelievably doing the book, and it was a pleasure to work with Wayne through it. But the response I've had has absolutely been fantastic, not just with the United supporters, which is pleasing. It's men who just looked at the title of the book and read it, and were very, very complimentary about it, which pleases me very much. I've had a great response, to be fair.
Fantastic. Wayne, how has it been? Have you found the reception to, I know you wrote it and you are the author, but how have you found that the reception has been to the book in the past year or so since you published it?
Yeah, everyone, it's a strange thing writing, being a ghostwriter, especially with United legends, because my experience is, well, you know what a ghostwriter is supposed to be. They're supposed to be invisible. And Sammy went out of his way to sort of make sure that everyone knew that I'd worked on the book, that everyone has been giving me credit for it as well. But yeah, I don't know, around the time of the release of the book, I made a joke quite frequently, because Sammy and I did, I mean, this just goes to show the measure of Sammy. We did something for BBC and he insisted that I was there on the radio with him, and I had no reason to be, but he would say nice things, and so the comments that I would talk about would be how, working with Brian on his book, I reached out to Sammy that's over a decade ago. I reached out to Sammy to see if he'd contribute for it, and he did. And I think I'd mentioned even then, if you ever fancy doing another book, let me know. And it took a long time, because I don't know, working on Gordon's book, working on a book on the second division season, various other weird incidents that would lead Sammy and I together. Like someone contacted me once with a scrapbook that they thought belonged to Sammy, and I contacted Sammy, and it turned out to be a scrapbook that Sammy's dad had made for him when he was a kid, that the original journalist who wrote his book in Stan Liversidge, is that right, Sammy?
Stan Liversidge, yeah.
He borrowed it in 81 and he just never got returned, but I was able to do that. And it just seemed like, I think Sammy, and I, because I kept bugging Sammy about it, it just seemed like our paths were coming back together. And Sammy reached out maybe 3 years ago to say he wanted to sort of finally get down to working on the book, and we made it work. And it's just, Sammy's played how many times for United, managed his country, managed clubs, and his story is incredible. But the thing that I loved working on, the thing I loved about working on it was the fact that it's such a human story. It's actually a story of a man who happened to do these things. He talks, there was no holds barred with anything really. He was telling everything in gut-wrenchingly honest detail. Like, I don't think I've ever worked with anyone who's been certainly not in the footballing realm, who has been quite so open about their emotions. I mean, you were talking about an era where, like, blokes are blokes, and Sammy's been quite open about his emotional connection. Like, leaving United left him in tears. Obviously, he's been through, both his parents dying in a very traumatic year, and he's laid all his emotions on the line. So I think, and people have responded to that as well. You talk about the feedback that the book's got. People have connected with that. That's something that's resonated with them. Yes, Sammy's Mr. Manchester United, but the human aspects of it, that's been the rewarding aspect, is that people have picked up on that. So it's just been an absolute pleasure, and just said to Sammy many times, it's just a shame that we can't do another one. Well, maybe we can. Who knows?
And there was a bit of a theme running through that with Brian Greenhoff's book, Gordon Hill's book, Sammy's book, the book about the 74 season. And one of the questions I wanted to ask you, Sammy, about that 74 season is, how important was it, in your opinion, that United came back up straight away? And the other part of that question is, what do you think the implications would have been had that not been the case?
Oh, well, the answer to your second part there, Paul, is it would have been an absolute disaster if we didn't respond right away the way we did to get back in. It was such a huge disappointment that a club like Manchester United, and really not that long after winning the European Cup, when you think about it in football terms, 68, the 74 when we go. Yeah, absolutely. For a club just to go from the highest pinnacle right down to relegation, it's just unbelievable. People actually didn't even think that we could go down, before we were relegated. Oh, it's going to happen. We're going to have a turn of luck. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Manchester United cannot be relegated. And yes, we did. But that season in the second division, for me personally, was probably the best thing that happened. I know at the time everyone was crestfallen and heartbroken, players, supporters, everyone, when we got relegated. But that season in the second division really brought, when the Doc got that team together, was the best thing for me personally that's happened at Manchester United. That team that he got and built with the wingers, Stevie Coppell, Gordon Hill, bringing Stuart Houston, little Arthur coming through, Jimmy Nicholl on the right side, Alec Forsyth, Brian Greenough, Martin Buchan, Big Jim Houghton in there, Lou McCarry, Jerry Daly, myself, Stuart Pearson, Jimmy Greenough coming in. It was unbelievable to play with those type of players at that time. And the football we played, home and away, that first season in the second division, was absolutely unbelievable. And seriously, fans, and Wayne knows this, fans till, I see fans at Old Trafford when I'm working there, and they still talk about them days. It's remarkable how they talk about them days and put that team on such a pedestal, even though we only won, as I say, we won the cup. We've been to 2 other finals. That side, runners-up. The majority of that side under Dave Sexton, runners-up. That's the closest we got to winning it. But it's because how we played, the entertaining way, or tried to entertain, them supporters loved it.
I've got to be honest, you completely preempted one of the points I was going to make about the fact when you talk to fans at Old Trafford now, they continually talk about the 74 season. And arguably over the past 10 years since the United Before Fergie account has been up and running, the 74 season is by far and away the most favourite season of United supporters of that time. Going to the Yorks, and places like that where
Unbelievable.
you would normally gone, taking the turnover. And we touched on this last week as well, Wayne, when United the Red Army just took over towns all over the UK, and with their own their own brand of personality and characters. And it seems that was just an amazing season to be a follower, to be following United that season, and that clearly comes across through tweets and posts and everything else. So
yeah,
I was only 2 at the time, so I wish I'd been a bit older. It'd have been amazing.
It was like every time we sort of we got the bus near the ground, all you seen was red and white. No matter who we played, away from home, this is, you seen red and white fans in their hordes singing, chanting. When we used to take the train down to London, the fans would be in the station waiting for us and supporting us. It was just incredible, and we had that sort of feeling that we can't let these supporters down. Especially we're in the second division, where favourites are one of the favourites to go up, but everyone wanted to beat us. Every team we played, home and away, wanted to beat Manchester United. And it was incredible the way the supporters got behind us and supported us. Record gates away from home, thousands locked out. It was just unbelievable. But that could only happen to a club like Manchester United, and that's why I'm touching on all that. It was so important that we came back right away. And then that second division to the first, we entered the final, 76, 77, and they were unbelievable years.
Yeah. Now, from a player's perspective, how important was it to have the support of the fans behind you? And I don't mean that they turned up with their flags and their scarves and stuff, but the noise and the following, was, and I'm guessing that was such a driver for the team. Is as you just mentioned, we don't want to let these fans down.
No.
It's so looking at it from that side, was it? You played for the fans. We're going to go there and put a show on. We're going to beat teams. We're going to entertain them because they've given us the support. You could have very easily, when the team goes down, people go, "Oh, there's second division. Well, I'm not even going to support them anymore." But that didn't happen.
No.
And it just seems that the love just blossomed that even more for that particular team that went through the second division.
Yeah, totally the opposite there. That because we felt that right away from the very first game, there was a sort of a little bit of added pressure on us to say, we've got to come out of this division. We've got to do it, and we've got to do it the right way. We can't go into the second division, and Wayne touched on there about hoofing the ball from back to forward, which a lot of teams did in that second division, especially when we went to their ground. They tried to unsettle us with their tactics, with their getting in our faces and not letting us settle on the ball and stuff like that. So we had to overcome all these obstacles. But right behind us was this magnificent support, believing in us that we were going to turn it around, believing in us that we were going to get out of this division. And we had this sort of little bit of feeling at early stages in that division that, oh, hey, look at the crowd here today. We can't let them down. We can't let them down. They've travelled to London. They've spent money. They've done this. They've done that. We've got to do the job. And that's the way we never took anything for granted in the second division. Tommy Docherty, Tommy Gavanna, his coach at the time, would not let us rest on our laurels. We had to be on our toes every game. And we had a fantastic thing that Tommy Gavanna used to do. Once we went to an away ground, we got off the bus. While the kit man, Norman Davies, put the kid out in the dressing room, Tommy Gavanna said, right, get out in that pitch and go right over to them supporters and clap them and cheer them and whatever. And we did that every away game, and it worked a treat. It got the crowd up. It got the crowd really upbeat, seeing us go over and clapping them and thanking them for the support. But we needed that support. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, how difficult was it to communicate on the pitch with such a noise like that, or did you just have that kind of relationship with your teammates where you knew what each one of you needed to do while you're on the pitch? Because I can't imagine that would have been easy, having that sheer noise at Old Trafford, and trying to do what you need to do on the pitch without clearly hearing what's going on?
Yeah, well, we knew exactly when we were on the pitch the way Tommy Dock he called a great sort of like he wanted us, told us how he wanted us to play. He had the players who knew what he was going on about and enjoyed what we were telling us what to do. But once we got out there and you heard that even gave more excitement to want to play. And especially at Old Trafford, with the crowds we get in that second division time, it was unbelievable. You know, the crowd sing your name, every player right throughout the team. When the first whistle went, away we went, and the crowd stuck by it the whole 90-odd minutes.
It just sounds like incredible times, and I'm sure, like Wayne, wish we'd been old enough to experience that. But I kind of experienced it through the social feeds. Talking about it, I did ask for some comments about memories about you, and I want to run through some of those if I can. Eddie, these are all on Twitter. So Eddie says, a team player full of running and box to box. Rob Whittle brings up the equaliser in the '79 Cup final, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some point. Pryor, I don't want to mispronounce his surname. I think it's Mahawat. I could be wrong. Sorry, Pryor, if that's wrong. So Sammy's first match at Old Trafford was his first match at Old Trafford, which was Tottenham in November 1971. And he was a brilliant player for United. Nick, McIlroy's through, and McIlroy's done it. And then Alan Sunderland went to break our hearts. Ted remembers the hat-trick against Wolves on the day that we signed Robbo on the pitch. Hear Me Calling tweeted, 2 goals stand out. Your debut goal v City and the second in a win against Liverpool in the 77-78 season. Neither were spectacular, but important because of who they were against. So what do you remember most about your debut? I mean, what a game to be thrown into the Lions' Den against City in a Manchester derby.
Yeah, you know something. I obviously I get asked this question quite a lot. And it's one of the games, it's if it just happened on Saturday. The way it happened, getting the bus from my digs in Stretford, number 63 to Warwick Road, walking down Warwick Road into the ground, straight up to Frank O'Farrell's office when he told me that I'd be playing in place of Dennis Law, who failed the fitness test. Getting on the bus from Old Trafford to go to Davy Hume Golf Club, pre-match meal. Before I left Old Trafford, George Best coming up to me and saying, just go out there, play your normal game. If you score a goal today, I'll buy you a bottle of champagne, bring it in Monday. All these here stuff that none of the players made a big sort of beeline for me. They just thanked me. Well done. Enjoy your game. No one made a fuss, which I thought was fantastic. They sort of give me a feeling that they believed in me. Even at such a young age, but I must admit, getting on the bus and driving to Main Road, then my stomach started going a little bit when I seen the crowds going there, and I seen people looking at me through the bus windows and didn't even know who I was. It was just an unbelievable day, fantastic game, and it turned out one of the best derbies still spoken about. 6 goals, me scoring the first one, and. Yeah, it was remarkable debut. I loved every minute of it.
Now, Martin Spencer on Facebook always meant to ask you, what did you drink the bottle of champagne that George gave you after the 71 derby, or did you keep it?
I kept it for about 8 years, believe it or not, because it was from George. I hadn't got the bottle to say to George, I don't like champagne. I've never had champagne in my life. But because he kept it for about years, and I opened it at some christening or whatever, one of my kids, I think, but because it was from him, I kept it that length of time, over 8 years.
So you kept your phrase. Did you drink it in the end, or did you give it away, or did
no?
I
opened it at a christening.
Okay.
Kids, and I just opened it and just celebrated it that way. I'm not too sure how it tasted after 8 years, but I didn't care because I didn't like champagne. But it was opened in the end.
Yeah, Martin also says that you're a walking encyclopedia of United in the 70s. Mark Beard on Facebook said he went on the Legends tour a couple of Sundays ago with you. Absolutely down-to-earth guy. Loved him as a player. And the stories he told were great insights to back in the day. Sue Jones, she loves you. You're a special hero of hers. The Last Busby Babe. And Pamela Anslow also on Facebook just put The Last Busby Babes. I have got more memories that I'm going to be, or more comments that I'm going to be sharing with you. One thing that comes up a lot is 1979. And we're 2-0 down to the Arsenal with, 6 minutes left. Gordon McQueen scores, and then up pops the Sammy McIlroy equaliser. Talk me through that. What was going through your head at that point? Did you know there was 6 minutes left on the clock? Was it you were just playing until the classic play to the final whistle? What was going through the mind at that point? You're 2-1 down. You're about to equalise. Have we got time to turn this around?
Well, I mean, the game, if you just don't, for a second, the game, I watched the game months later. Everyone talks about the 4 minutes. But Arsenal went 2-0 up, and rightly so. They started better than us, whatever. But we had a fair share of the play. We had chances. Everything we seemed to hit went straight at Pat Jennings. Joe Jordan's headers, Stevie Coppell, McCarry, all had decent efforts. Rated straight at Pat Jennings, where a little bit of a miss hit might have been in the net and stuff like that. And you begin to think, this is not going to be your day. And then finally, with minutes ticking away, Joe Jordan crosses it, and Big Gordon sweeps it in with his left leg, and 2-1. You're thinking, I always remember Big Gordon looking over to the bench and putting his arm up and tapping his left arm as if to say, how long's to go? And we were just thinking, right, 2-1, minutes to go, let's see what happens. And then we go right up the field. Arsenal give the ball away, and I happen to get that equaliser to make it 2-2. And at 2-2, you're thinking extra time. I was thinking extra time. And I'm thinking if we can take it in the extra time, because I looked at the kickoff when we finally got the kickoff to 2-2. I looked at Big Pat, Sammy Nelson, Pat Rice, who I knew, and they were deflated. They were absolutely deflated. They could not believe what had gone on, seemingly waiting for the final whistle. Now it's thinking, oh, this could be extra time. And then the rest is history. You know, we go, Brady goes on a run to Ricks, and Ricks crosses, and Sunderland puts it in. Just unbelievable. A high seconds earlier, seconds later, you've lost the cup. And that's another sort of 4 minutes here I'll never forget.
Yeah, I don't think any United fan who watched that match will ever forget. And I'm not afraid to say it was the first match I ever cried at United. I was 7 at the time, so
You weren't
it was. No, I definitely weren't the only one. And Mark Stringfellow on Facebook, the equaliser in the 79 Cup final. As a 10-year-old, he was ecstatic, only for his world to come crashing down 60 seconds later. He was heartbroken. Richard James, who's commented in the feed, the first game of football he cried at because of the result was the cup final in 79. You know, I think sometimes forget 76 as well, with Southampton. I know the year later, the doc said, we're going to come back, we're going to win it, and he did. But that 76, do you think there was a lot of complacency in the team at that point, thinking, well, it's only Southampton, no disrespect to Southampton, or do you think it's just one of those days where it just didn't happen?
We were a young side. Everyone's favourites because how we were playing, how we came up, did well in the league. There was a stage in the league where everyone thought we might be able to do the double. We were playing that well. Obviously, the league form just dropped off near the end. We got to the cup final, and after losing that final, it was the quickest game I've ever played in my life. The Wembley's a big occasion. It's on from early hours in the morning, the TV, in the hotel, on the bus, to the ground. We are everyone's favourites, and Southampton won it with their experience. They were had more experienced players in their side. Peter Rodriguez, Osgood, Jimmy McIlroy, an ex-teammate, Shannon. They had more experience. Mel Blythe at the back. They coped with the day more than we did. I think they thought, listen, these are thinking they're just going to turn up in Wembley and win it. They were really up for the game, and even though their goal was a couple of yards offside, I hit the bar with a header. I should have scored, but it came off Panchon. I seen it late. It was just one of those days where it was Southampton's day. They handled it better than what we did on the day.
Yeah, and United fans were there of that age will still say that it was offside. They said, I don't care what camera angle you look at, that was definitely offside. So yeah, bitter memories from 76 to the heights and the ecstasy of 77, when obviously Liverpool, who were dominating everything in sight then, and came up against the Red Army and a United, and we it was the topic of our first podcast last week, was the 77 Cup final, just because it has such a special memory. Do you remember much of the game, or was it just one of those just went so quick, and you've had to watch it back to go, I remember that, and I remember that. How did that kind of work in your mind?
Well, it was obviously, you touched on there that the Doc saying in front of the thousands of people that welcomed us back, even when we lost the cup, to say we'll be back next year and win it. And when we got to the final again and we're up against Liverpool, the roles from the year before were all reversed, because everyone thought it was Liverpool's day. Everyone thought they've won the league. They're in the European Cup final on the Wednesday. In between, they'll win the FA Cup and they'll get the treble. So that gave us a little bit of motivation. And the Doc, to be fair, and Tommy Gavanna, they didn't play a lot of emphasis on Liverpool, how great they were, how this, how that. We had to do our job. We had to match them in every part of the field, and every player who you were playing against. We had to match them, and it was all about that. But that side also had the eye on the 76 and hey, let's make sure this doesn't happen again, even though it's against Liverpool. And we had a little bit of luck in the final, which you need. I don't care, you're the greatest team in the world. You need a wee bit of luck, and we had it with a winner. But it was such an amazing place to win, especially an FA Cup, after having tasted and losing it in 76. To win it against a team like Liverpool in 77 was just a remarkable feeling. And it was so pleasing to see the supporters as well, after the agony they went through in 76 to the joy in 77. It was amazing. Absolute. What a difference. Unbelievable.
I mean, in hindsight, would you say that 76 was a blessing in disguise because it just motivated and drove you on to 77?
You don't think about it at that ball at the time. You think, oh my God, let's get out. Let's get out of Wembley when you lose it at Wembley. Wembley's the worst place in the world to lose. Let's get out of it. We all felt disappointed and let people down, families, supporters. That's how we all felt. We had to go back and we had to have sort of like the dinner back in the hotel, and it was just doom and gloom till people got a few drinks in them. But it was such shocking to lose when we were odds-on favourites, but more determined then to make amends the following season, and especially against Liverpool, even sweeter.
Yeah, considering how they were sweeping up everything before them.
They were good. They were a cracking side.
But United always had something against them, though, didn't they? It was always United always fancied themselves against Liverpool and always did well against Liverpool.
Especially in the cup, we always seem to have a little one over on them in the cup games. They were more consistent than us in the 42 games. That's why they were champions. But over in the one-off cup games, we've done really well against them.
The 79 semi-final is a classic example of going to a replay, and then the Jimmy Greenoff winner. Yeah. Which I swear to this day, I thought John Motson was going to combust from the inside. His commentary he just went up a complete another level. But like you say, it's one-off games that United had their number on. Just not quite enough over the course of a season.
Yeah, it's funny enough, I can just interrupt you there. In them semi-finals, them 3 semi-finals we played in, those 3 cup finals that we got to, we were underdogs in every semi-final we played. And against the teams that we played, Derby County, Leeds and Liverpool, they were all favourites to beat us. Even the Leeds team at Sheffield were supposed to be the favourites to beat us that day, but we beat them.
David, welcome to the stream. Had a few issues getting on, I hear.
Definitely had a few issues, yeah.
So, you know, you would have followed the Docks team throughout the 70s. What are your memories of watching Sammy during that period? What are your
I might be repeating things you've already talked about, but I was in the city for your first game, Sammy. Normally, the Kippax was divided in City and United, but I was in the opposite side, and there for your first game, and you were electric. The atmosphere was electric, and when you scored that opening goal, I mean, we all went apeshit. It was simple as that, and just your energy, your enthusiasm, the goal you scored, the one you laid on, was fantastic. We thought, here is another United great player. I thought the press at the time were unfair to say, is this the new George Best? That's an unfair label. But the skill and energy you did have was unique to you. And I remember that. And I think the following game, you scored when we beat Spurs 3-1. But if you remember, in those days, we always beat Spurs 3-1 at home. Away could be either way, but at home we always beat them 3-1. I remember some great games. I think there's a league game against Liverpool. Was it 77, 78? You scored. We won 2-0. Wasn't it the game when Ted McDougall also scored a great goal? Was it that? Do you remember who scored with you?
I don't think to be honest with you, I don't think Ted McDougall played that game. I think at Old Trafford, I got a volley from inside the box from a Chris McGrath cross. I'm not too sure who got the first one, and if that's the 2-0 you're thinking about, but I don't think Ted McDougall played that day.
That was a different 2-0 against Liverpool. Any 2-0 against Liverpool is fine by me. I'm sure you talked about the great games like you just did against Liverpool, but I was also at Wembley 2 years later in the famous against Arsenal. Everyone said Arsenal played better, Liam Brady. I thought we didn't play that bad, but they were 2-0 up and thought of strolling. And 5 minutes from the end, I think cross came in from Jordan and McQueen got it, or the other way round. And then
That's right. Jordan from McQueen, that's right.
And then you did that amazing run. And I was at the United end. And when that goal went in, I tell you, it was incredible. I've heard noise with United, but up to that point, that was the greatest. We couldn't believe it. And like a scene out of a movie, Arsenal were dead and gone. And all they wanted to do was kick off and dive. And the ball just happened to go to the left. And they just happened to cross it. And Alan Sunderland just happened to kick the ball into the bloody net. We couldn't believe it. If you'd have been at our end, from total ecstasy to, and then the final whistle. And within a few minutes, I looked around me. It was like dead bodies everywhere. We could not believe. It was like a blow-up doll had been shot. You just cannot believe the carnage, But that's football. It takes the high highs and lower lows and anything on the planet. But how did you feel after scoring what you thought got us back into it? And what happened 90 seconds later? How did you feel?
I was like, Big Gordon McQueen come out with a statement, which is ever so true. It's like, you've won the pools, but you forgot to put your coupon in.
Oh, yeah.
And that's how we felt, because you just touched on it there, that I looked at those players that I've mentioned before, Pat Rice, Nelson and Jennings, who I knew with the Northern Ireland squad. They were absolutely deflated. They could not believe what had gone on in a matter of minutes. And we're all overjoyed. We're all up for it. The crowd's roaring, and we just lost total. I don't know why it's concentration or whatever, but we hadn't got anyone in that team, including myself, to bring Brady down. Just bring him down.
Yeah.
Somebody just bring him down. Little Mickey had a little snip at him. Louis had a little snip at him, but he sort of got past that and then fed it to Rex, who crossed it. And let's be fair, I mean, Big Gary should have done better, but I won't go into that. And Sunderland slides it in. But, oh, my God, that's the worst feeling from being on top of the world to the end of the world in a matter of a second.
Incredible. We talk a lot, I'm sure you talked a lot about Liverpool. I found that during like the 70s and 80s, they were, as you just said, the most consistent team. But we always seemed to do them in the league. And yet we always did them, yet Everton were our bogey team. They always did us.
Yeah.
Did the players feel there's a certain sequence of game, no matter what you do, you'll always win or you always lose?
There's certain teams you played against, how you played, you were coming away with nothing. There were certain grounds like that. I always remember Ipswich was one of those grounds for us over the years. But yeah, we did, as you say, we did always well against Liverpool, especially in cup competition. Consistent enough in the league. We dropped points against, stupid teams, silly teams, where Liverpool just steamrolled teams. And that's why they won more championships then than what we did. But yeah, they were. I actually think, and I said this to Wayne, with the Doc after winning it in '77, I think if the Doc had stayed on, maybe added a couple of players to that squad that we had, I think we were ready to push Liverpool all the way for anything. League, I think we could have done that.
Yeah, because the team was a young team full of energy as well as skill. All we needed maybe one or two hard centre backs just to congeal it. But the team was beautiful to watch. We love watching, even when you lost occasionally or we drew. It was still a wonderful game.
Yeah,
and that is what we missed. That's why we often said during the second division, that's one of the greatest time for United fans. It was a joy to watch. We took over towns. It was the whole complete thing. But that season, what season for you was the most important, most enjoyable to play in?
Well, to be honest with you, I touched on it before when we got relegated. Getting back into that from the second to the first, that second division campaign was unbelievable. Football that we played home and away. Some shocking grounds we went to, really desperate dressing rooms. They made it hard for us, giving us balls that were blew up so hard you couldn't kick our head or warm up with them. They were shocking. The bats were terrible. Oh, they did everything to try and upset us. But on the field, the football in the second division was absolutely unbelievable. Then the season after, our first season back in the first division, was a joy to play in as well, because we just continued our form from the second to the first division and took a lot of teams by surprise the way we played. So the second division, coming out of it in the first season back, was great to play in. Fantastic.
I remember the first season back. The first game was Wolves away. We took over the whole of the South Bank. We won 2-0 away.
That's right.
Was a fantastic game. The first game back at Old Trafford was Sheffield United.
5-1.
We won 5-1. And Tony Curry came to our end. We said, Curry, what's the score? Curry. And to be fair to him, he went 5-1. Yeah, you got it. So I like that interplay with the crowd. Did you do much interplay with the players when you're so intense in a game? Were you aware of the crowd? Did you react to it?
Oh, the crowd, I mean, especially the Stratford end in those days, was absolutely unbelievable. The Stratford end got behind us from the first whistle. Well, since we ran out on the pitch, the roar from the Stratford end was absolutely unbelievable. That always gave us a lift. All the way through the game, they'd be singing. And the atmosphere at Old Trafford in them days, when we came back, was absolutely brilliant. So the crowd definitely gave us a lift. They were behind us 100%. But I must admit, the football that we played in that first season back was breathtaking at times.
Yeah, ending up third. But it was inconsistent because the Sheffield United game was great. The following home game, we just drew 1-1 with Coventry. There were ups and downs. What would you have done if you were manager? What would you have done to improve that team to bring the consistency along with the brilliant football?
Well, again, I think you would have looked at certain areas of the team and maybe just try to add a couple of players. If you said you added 3 right down to Spain, whatever, just to keep players on their toes, just to get a few experienced people in, but had to be able to play the way we played. It was no use just bringing experienced people in or somebody in who would just add to the squad. We had a special way of playing, and these players that had to come in would have had to be able to adapt to the way we played. And I'm sure Tommy Docherty would have had a big say in that, and I think he would have did that. And okay, it's ifs and buts and maybes, but I'm sure the Doc, it was full of it at the time. You as supporters, you loved the Doc, you loved his personality. We were in the papers every day of the week, and it was great just to be part of that side at that time.
In fact, the way you say about Tommy Docherty, players had to fit into our scheme. In many ways, it's what's happening today. Erik ten Hag has got a way of playing, which again is with energy and the fitness and so on. So players coming in have to fit in with his strategy. And I think he's going to be as strict and on that. What is your opinion of what Erik ten Hag has done so far?
Well, he's definitely turned his round. There's no doubt about it. I think you've touched on it there. I think we're a fitter side. I think we're more organised. I think we can see his shape and what we're trying to do, which is good for the players especially. I think he knows the history of Manchester United. I think when he first came, I was impressed with his first press conference when he said, "I know all about Manchester United, how to win and win well." I think I like to hear that from a manager. You know, we are scraping through some games at the moment, and he knows that, and he's not happy with that. I'm pleased he's not happy with that, because I was always brought up with the likes of Busby's, the Tommy Docks, and people like that. If you win, you've got to win well. Sir Alex Ferguson carried that on as well. You know, if that team scores 2, we get 3. That's the way Manchester United have always been, and I think Ten Hag has got this in his mindset that's how he wants the team to play.
Yeah. And you as a manager, have you got a certain system, or does it depend on the players? I read recently you've gone back to, is it Macclesfield again?
Yeah.
I mean, what sort of system do you impose? What is your philosophy as a manager, and is it any different as it was for a player? Well,
when I first went into management, obviously my way of playing the game was the way we played. The team I played in under, as I say early on, the way Sir Matt used to build his teams up, the players he used to get. Tommy Docherty, the team I played in for years. I loved the way that team played. I used to try to set my teams up the same formation, the same things we did in training. When we didn't have the ball, how to get it back, pass and move. All the things that I was brought up with at Old Trafford, I took into my management. And after, you know, getting your coaching badges and stuff, and going to see how other teams played, how other teams set up, I only had one way in my mind to play, was the Manchester United way. And it worked out quite well for me. But as you touched on before there, and I'm going to say, is you have to, even at the lowest level, you have to have the players to play the way you want them to play. So you're getting a cart horse in and trying to ask it to play. You can't. You have to have ability and know how we want to play. And that's what I've always done, to get those players in who are capable of trying to play the way I want them to.
Very good.
Sammy, sorry, David. So, Sammy, during the while we've been live here, I've had some more comments coming through about memories of you from fans. One of them was from Craig Windram on Facebook. He posted a photo of yourself during a match day a few seasons ago. You spent 40 minutes chatting. You even remembered him from the Marlborough Snooker Club in town from the early 80s, when him and his mate played doubles against you and Lou Macari a few times. Lots of Super Sams. Lee Warhurst. Oh, yeah. Did they? Yeah, you like a bit of snooker. So Norman tells me.
Used to love snooker. I used to play with my big pal Norman Whiteside. I used to beat him that much that he had to say, "Got a bad knack, I can play no more."
That's not what he told me.
But he always tells people that he beats me all the time, which is
that's exactly what he said. Sorry, Norman. Victor Grady posted a photo of you on an eggshell that was painted on about 1980 by a young Welsh girl. Sammy used to live close to us when he was playing and chatted to him on a few occasions in the local pub. Darren, this photo is incredible. Daryl Gaskin, you scored for United at Old Trafford in his first ever game at home versus Villa in the 80-81 season, and also your hat-trick versus Wolves. Alan Taylor says, the brilliant Sammy Mac. For the life of me, I'll never know why they didn't win the league in that great dark era, which is the question we'll come to very shortly. And Martin Spencer again says, ask Sammy if he saw Bestie nutmegging Cruyff in the 76 Holland versus Northern Ireland game.
Yeah, I played at that game. We drew 2-2 in Holland. And Neeskens, who was a fantastic footballer, was trying to mark Bestie man for man. And Bestie just absolutely destroyed him. And they were a cracking side, by the way, at that time. Danny Blanchflower was our manager, and we had a remarkable result in Feyenoord, 2-2. And Bestie was outstanding that night, absolutely outstanding.
That wasn't unusual for Bestie, though, was it, to be fair? To be outstanding.
And nutmeg people, he used to do it for fun.
John PC on Twitter says I knew him from before his debut when he lived in lodgings in Stretford. What is his debut versus City at Main Road? Great player. Paul Smith, Super Sam, what a player. MUFC legend. Rob H. I was staying in Manchester with relatives, and one evening it was my turn to drive to the pub, of course. My relative Stan mentioned that we were picking Sam up on the way. Thought nothing about it until Sammy Mac got into my car. One of my childhood heroes. True story. Brian says, was at his debut against City in 71, in which he scored a great goal when George Best left the ball for him to shoot. A very skillful, entertaining and hard-working player who was a legend of the club. Tim Powell says, my first United hero and the obvious standout was Sammy's hat-trick against Wolves the day that Robbo signed. Craigie says, the hat-trick he scored versus Wolves sticks in my mind. Robbo signing on the pitch, 5-0 drubbing. Oh, and his mazy run in the 79 Cup final. A proper United legend is Sammy. I realise that time is getting on and we could sit here all night and chat United and football with you, Sammy. But I've got a couple of sort of quick fire questions that I want to ask you, and then a question that cropped up in last week's cast. So in your career at United, in the 11 years you were there, who was the best player you played with?
Well, obviously, I mean, come to mind, Bestie was my hero, my idol. I loved him. As a man and as a footballer, he was genius. And I love him. I always mention him. But to mention someone else, and I've played with some fantastic footballers at Old Trafford. I really have. But that 70s team that I played in, with Big Alec and goal right through, you know, the Greenhoffs, Martin Buchan, fantastic captain, Lou Macari, Stuart Pearson, Jerry Daly, Jimmy Greenhoff, Coppell Hill. Every one of them I love playing with, and I would never, ever sort of try to take one of them out of that. You know, Brian Robson, when I played a bit of time with Brian Robson, was a great player. But there's so many I played with, even in my early days. You know, we get Best Law Charlton. You know, I played with Paddy Kern in the reserves, Lobby Styles in the reserves. I could go on and on and on and mention players that I played with at Old Trafford. But I enjoyed myself so much with that 70s team under the dock. It was fantastic to be. We all got on well together. The spirit was fantastic. And as I said before, even everyone talks about that team, and rightly so.
Who was the most underrated player that you played with at United? Someone that you didn't feel got the credit that they actually deserved?
Oh, dear. That's a good question. Underrated. I always remember a little Irish lad, a little super sub called David McCreary. Played with him in Northern Ireland and United. He brave as a lion for such a little lad. He could play centre forward, he could play right wing, he could play midfield. You could put him anywhere and he would have given you 100%. But he just could never sort of break regular into the team. But I remember him filling in for Lou Macari in I think he's played in one of the semi-finals. Maybe wrong with that. Might have been Derby or something. But he came on in the finals as a sub. We replaced Gordon Hill. But he was one of the players, no matter what he didn't seem to get the credit what he did for the other players. And he was a fantastic little player to have in your team, full of heart. Unbelievable.
If you could replay one match from your career, which one would it be?
Oh, that's another crack. I'd love to play the 76 final again. And
I knew you'd say that.
I know now what I didn't know then, how to handle the game. I would love to put that game straight. But also my debut. I'll never, ever, ever forget my debut at Main Road. Never. From the bus to the ground, from Davyhulme Golf Club to Main Road, the actual game itself, 3-3 against the City side, Bell, Summerby, Lee, Mike Doyle, Alan Oakes. Fantastic day. I'll never forget.
And the final question, and it was another question that came up last week, is had the situation with the Doc been different, what do you think would have happened at United had the Doc been sacked when he was sacked? Do you believe we would have won league titles? Do you believe we would have challenged for the European Cup? In your opinion, where do you think we would have been?
I honestly think we would have got better. That's my opinion. Some of my teammates might disagree with me, but I think the Doc, after winning that cup final, would have strengthened us. And we were at an age as well where we were coming into an age where all the players would have been more experienced. Know-how would have been better. And I think the Doc definitely would have pushed Liverpool at the time all the way if he had stayed on. I've got no doubt about that at all. He would have pushed us on, definitely.
It's the great what if, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I think, and the question will never get answered. But I'm sure that United fans of David's age and that followed you through the 70s would probably agree with you that all the ingredients were there. The team was young. It was exciting. It was attacking, and with one or two additions in key areas, would have pushed Liverpool into the early 80s.
No question about that for me.
Brilliant, Sammy. Thank you so much indeed for coming onto the podcast this evening. It's been an absolute honour to have you on. It's not every day. I said you get a bona fide United and Northern Ireland legend on the podcast. I really, really appreciate it, and I hope that we'll speak to you again some point in the future.
Thanks very much, Ron. And David.
Cheers, Sammy.
Wayne, thanks very much.
Thanks, David. Thanks, Wayne. So this has been the second United Before Fergie podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. Please like, subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening back on your audio podcast, please be sure to leave a review. And we'll be back next Monday with another podcast at 8:30. Until then, have a good week. Take care, everyone, and up United.
Cheers.